Hey gamers, Maniac here with GameAccess.net talking about our first GameAccess.net podcast in quite a while. And if this is your first Game Access podcast, I'd like to say welcome. This week we're going to be talking about Watch Dogs, the entire Watch Dogs franchise, in fact. Watch Dogs is a new property from Ubisoft. It is available on pretty much every console platform except for the handhelds. Whether you have a Wii U, Xbox 360, Xbox One, PC, PS4, PS3, whatever, you will be able to play Watch Dogs. And I got a chance to play Watch Dogs myself, and I really enjoyed it. So I just want to get that out there right now. I know that's probably controversial. Some people are kind of split on what they think about Watch Dogs. I enjoyed the game quite a bit. I was very happy about it. So I was really happy that it was being made. I'm really happy that I got to play it. I won't talk about why just yet, why I like the game. I kind of saved my reviews to when the game's, when I finally do start talking about the game's release. But just so everybody's aware on how I stand on it right now, I did enjoy the game, and I still do enjoy the game, actually. So typically the way I organize these podcasts are very simple. I try to organize these podcasts in a way that I start off with the earliest portions of the game's development, moving on to the game's release as well as my nostalgic memories of it, and then I wrap the podcast up with what I believe to be the future of the franchise, or what I believe will be coming for the future of the franchise, that sort of thing. Now, that's a little bit hard for me to do because, let's face it, the game was first announced at E3 2012. It's only been in development for as far as we know, we've only known it's going to be coming out for about 2 years now. Not really that nostalgic in my eyes. It's kind of hard for me to talk about it, but I think that, it was a really, really valid first attempt, and I think that it could bring on an awesome franchise in the future, and I have several reasons why I think that, and I will be talking about that as we wrap this podcast up. But let's just get into the franchise's beginnings. It's possible that the Watch Dogs game was first announced at E3 2012. It was the final announcement made at the E3 Ubisoft press conference that year. A man came up and basically talked about the future of surveillance, the future of security, and the dangers that he perceived with that, especially given real-world examples like the New York blackout, as well as the possibility of any surveillance information being sold to advertisers. Those were his concerns with it. Are they valid concerns? Are they not valid concerns? I'm going to chalk that up for somebody else that's more knowledgeable to talk about. I do know quite a little bit about this sort of thing, but I'd rather not get into all of this in a podcast specifically designed to talk about the game and the game franchise itself, the history, and that sort of thing. So I really don't want to get into it. I would defer to people that do know more, and I have talked to people that do know more, and I have discussed them. If you are interested in the possibilities and the realism about the game, I would totally recommend checking out an article I wrote on my site with help. My Science Check, I do have a feature on my editorial section called Science Check, where I talk about the real-world implications of several concepts brought in by certain video games, and Watch Dogs was the most recent Science Check article I wrote about. I've also written about other games like Alone in the Dark and certain games in the Metal Gear Solid series, but Watch Dogs is among those games. And I was very happy to write about it. I had a friend that talked me through quite a bit of it, and they were very happy to answer my questions about it. So I would totally recommend checking that out if you're interested. And plus, there is a guy on YouTube, I don't know who he is, who did talk about the possibilities of real impact of Watch Dogs. I know that a lot of people watched his videos and enjoyed it. I didn't like it so much because he didn't really detect or compare the stuff directly to the game. He didn't really attack specifics on the game like I did with my Science Check article. He basically just talked about what is currently available and then just said, Watch Dogs. It didn't seem like after watching his video on it, He specifically said, oh, this is possible, this is not possible, this is possible, this is not possible. This could, in theory, be possible. He didn't talk about any of that, and that was kind of disappointing. I wish he had done that. But needless to say, if you're interested in hearing my ideas and opinions about the possibilities of that, again, I'm not really going to go into that. There have been other people that have attacked that issue, which is fine. They've done, they've had their own success with that. I would recommend checking that out. We're going to be talking about the game today, as well as the history of the franchise. So, right after they set the tone for this, right after Ubisoft set the tone with the possibilities of surveillance state and advertising and all of these other concerns about what would happen if you had a centralized system, if someone, DeForest, was able to take advantage of it or get into it, what would he be able to do with it? They opened up a scene from the game. A scene that, unfortunately, is not in the final version of the game, but it was a great scene that actually was able to successfully set the stage. We see a main character, Aiden Pierce, a vigilante, if you will, with the basically wandering around modern-day Chicago, or what seemed to be slightly futuristic, but still modern-day looking Chicago. And what's to say, just to show off the functions of the game, they show just a few things about how he's able to simply get into a place where he's not on the guest list or not welcome. Basically able to cause small power outages, able to control cameras, able to remotely target certain systems to cause distractions and just kind of wander in and take advantage of those distractions. Within a short period of time, they were able to show off, and I think the demo was very good at that, they were able to show off a lot of not just atmosphere, but also a lot of the gameplay possibilities. And as far as I can recall, all the stuff that they showed, even though the scene didn't actually happen in the game, we do go to the venue. We do obviously still take control of Aiden Pierce. We still obviously, the game takes place in Chicago. And as far as I know, we are able to actually do, as far as I remember, all the stuff that was in the original E3 2012 demo in the game. I'm going to talk about the graphics later on. I know that a lot of people are going to talk about the graphics. That I'm saving that for later. On top of that, the game looked great. The game ran really great. This was 2012. FYI, for those of you who don't remember, the current consoles that we've got that are out right now, the PS4, the Xbox One, for example, were not announced yet. We didn't know they were coming. PS4 wasn't announced until probably early 2013 for the PS4. The Xbox One wasn't announced until just before E3 2013 as well. So we didn't know there was going to be any of that. We didn't know there was going to be a PS4. We didn't know that there was going to be an Xbox One. As far as we could tell, these systems were probably running on high-end PCs, which is fine. You can have these systems running on high-end PCs. PC enthusiasts love having their games running well on powerful systems. They spend a lot of money building high-end rigs. So there's that. So it was very impressive. It looked beautiful. It looked more beautiful than currently any other game that Ubisoft was showing. It looked very realistic. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Max Payne with the kind of, they were going for like a photorealistic kind of look to it. I thought that was kind of awesome. There were, and then they kind of showed at the very end the way they wrapped it up. They showed that this game would not be a solely single player experience. You would be able to do things in multiplayer. Multiplayer players would be able to come into your games and either cause havoc or assist you and that sort of thing, which I thought was really interesting. I thought it was really cool that that would be happening. So they teased a lot in that initial trailer. But they got everybody's attention too. We didn't really know a story or anything like that. We didn't have any clue on any of that. But we knew, okay, we've got a protagonist, we've got a look, we've got a location, we've got abilities. And they did say it would be open world. They also said that there would be, at least as far as I remember recalling, they didn't say it in the E3 demo itself, or at least the one that was shown at the Ubisoft conference, but I did read several previews from other organizations, major gaming sites that did attend like previews at E3 itself when the trade show opened, that they were talking about the possibility of bringing in some type of companion app for smartphones and tablets and stuff like that. That obviously did turn out to pan out completely, and that does exist. It is available. I'll talk about that later. But they were talking about the possibility of having full integration of things like being able to track your friend's progress, and basically they said that this would be a fully fleshed out and integrated single player and multiplayer experience. This was like, we didn't really have that. We didn't really have a game that could be both multiplayer and single player at the same time. Still be able to play it, well, at least not ones that weren't multiplayer only or online only. They did say that Watch Dogs would be able to play single player, and you can play the game single player. But if you wanted multiplayer access, players would be able to drop in at your allowance. You could either have the settings on or whatever, and which was interesting for a lot of people and brought up some cool possibilities. I didn't really see other games do that sort of thing. I could see you inviting other players or other players dropping into your game, but that would be for co-op purposes. The fact that it would be a free-for-all where players would be able to get in for nefarious purposes for help was as far as I can recall. So, Watch Dogs had an early announcement, as far as I can remember, they were talking about the possibility of 2013. They were also talking about the possibility of 2014. We didn't know when this game would be coming out. Fast forward the big PS4 reveal. This was early 2014. Sony came out, I think this was February or March of last year. Sony came out to say, oh, by the way, we're going to release the PS4. And they showed it, they unveiled it. They talked about its future, they talked about what it was capable of. And then they showed the games. Both the games that they were working on, the games that other people would be working on, and the list of third parties that were interested in developing for the platform. They did show some stuff that nobody knew was coming. Well, let me phrase this. They did show some technology that people knew was coming but did not know it was going to be shown on the PS4, capable on the PS4. One of those was Unreal Engine 4. And another one was Final Fantasy's new engine, which I believe is powering Final Fantasy 15. If not, it'll probably be powering like the future Final Fantasy games past 15. And then they showed Watch Dogs, a full-on, decent new demo for Watch Dogs. And they did confirm Watch Dogs will be coming to the PS4 as well as the PS3. They did confirm that it would have PlayStation exclusive content in the form of some DLC that would be exclusive as well as some DLC missions. And they confirmed that they would have the best Watch Dogs experience on their platforms based upon that. That got a lot of people interested in the PS4. In fact, I remember that there were a lot of people interested in buying the PS4, and they were interested in buying it bundled with Watch Dogs. Because, as far as they could tell, they were pretty certain that Watch Dogs would be released before or at the same time that the PS4 was going to be coming out. It was timed for that at that point. But nobody really knew exactly when the game was going to be coming at yet. They did know that it would be probably coming at around that time. I think the early time was probably around October or November 2013. The demo was a very personal demo. They didn't really talk about story, more to just show what you'd be able to do in the game. At certain points in the game, they showed that events would trigger, whether it be muggings or just simple crimes that you could intervene in however you wanted. You could choose to intervene. You could choose not to intervene. It was up to you. You could choose how you wanted to intervene with them. And it would affect your morality score. That sort of thing would be left entirely up to you. It also showed that you'd be able to how you'd be able to interact with the world. You'd be able to see other people's effects, by being in close proximity to them because you were part of the system. You could see their bios and personal information about them. That all really impressed people. That impressed me quite a bit, actually. And so as the year progressed, as 2013 progressed, more and more information was coming out about the game. It was shown at E3 2013. I believe it was shown both at the Ubisoft conference as well as the PlayStation conference, where they did say that they would have the exclusive DLC. There would be exclusive DLC missions for the PS3 and PS4 versions. In fact, I think if I remembered correctly, my initial pre-order on the game was on the Xbox 360 version. This is why, kids, this is why you shouldn't pre-order that early. I ended up actually transferring my pre-order to something else because they kept swapping out what versions of the game were going to be the good versions or what versions of the game would be available. I remember I think I put $5 down on the game early on for I think it was the Xbox 360 version. Then I traded it for the PS3. And then when they announced that there was going to be a PS4 version and then they announced the collector's edition, I ended up canceling my pre-order and just moving to pre-order something else and just buying the collector's edition as soon as it came out, which was fine. I think I pre-ordered the collector's edition at Amazon around just shortly before the game ended up coming out. So there was that. Maybe I shouldn't have pre-ordered that early, but I did end up still getting that exclusive Alex Ross poster, which I thought was a really awesome poster. I did still get that poster for pre-ordering. So, as the year progressed, more and more information was coming out about the game. They started showing more demos about possibilities of things you'd be able to do, like you'd be able to swipe people's bank accounts, that you'd be able to interact with crimes, you'd be able to prevent crimes from happening. You'd be able to drive wherever you wanted. You'd be able to, do all kinds of cool different stunts. But, again, not really too much information was let out about the game story or anything like that, which I think was intentional, but I appreciated it. Since this wasn't an open world game, and I've described this game to many people who don't know about it, I've basically described the game as GTA meets hackers. I know that's kind of a weird statement to say. Hackers, of course, I love that movie growing up as a kid. Totally implausible, a lot of things in it. But damn, was that movie fun to watch. I don't know. Maybe I just liked, Johnny Lee Miller and Angelina Jolie. And I actually really like Matthew Lillard in that role as well. He's great when he plays the crazy comic relief. I think everybody did a good job in that. I really enjoyed that movie. So anyways, I kind of described the movie as GTA meets hackers, which is fine. I mean, you can have that kind of game. There are a lot of people, typically I don't like open world games, but I do like them when they have a bit of a twist to it. When they're done well and they have a bit of a twist to it. Infamous series I loved, including the new one, Infamous Second Son. I loved those games. Those were open world games. Just open world, like superhero GTA. Awesome. Great. Wonderful. And as for other games, like, what else? Watch Dogs was, like I said, it basically allowed you to be able to do anything with, the computer systems and things like that. I liked it. So time ticks by, and the marketing starts gearing up for the quote-unquote release of Watch Dogs. And I think it was either October or November 2013. In fact, they were even scheduling multiplayer sessions, actually, not just with Sony's people, but also with Microsoft's people, because I remember that even Microsoft was scheduling multiplayer release parties shortly after the game was scheduled to come out. And then at the last minute, Ubisoft delayed the game a couple of months. They basically said the game just wasn't ready. And that meant, unfortunately, that anybody who had pre-ordered any Watchdog bundled PS4s would either have to wait on them or basically switch their bundles to something else. Now, I don't think the Watch Dogs bundled PS4 ever came out, as far as I can recall. I think that got canceled entirely. And I don't know if anybody actually who had bundled the Watch Dogs PS4 version got exactly what they got something with it or got a refund or something. You'd have to post a comment on that. I'd really like to know what ended up happening with you, because I ended up buying a PS4. I couldn't even get a PS4 until I think it was March or April or something like that. I couldn't even get one. There were none on shelves, basically. I couldn't get a PS4 until like then, because they were all sold out for several months after launch. But that's neither here nor there. I got my PS4. I love it. I also got an Xbox One. I love that as well, and I got a Wii U. So I'm totally platform agnostic. I have a policy on this site for those of you who don't know. I will not. I have the platforms. I do not say which ones I prefer. I love them all. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. I do have them all. So I try my best to remain platform agnostic, and I will be platform agnostic for this podcast. In case you're curious, I did pick up the PS4 version of the game. We'll talk about that in a bit. Once I talk about the game's release. So eventually, the delay kind of, I think, hurt a lot of people's faith in the game itself. They were concerned about if the game was delayed that long. Was the game any good in the first place? Maybe it was delayed because it was a bad game and they needed... It could have been a performance thing. It could have been... They never... I don't think Ubisoft ever basically came out. I think the game just needed more polish, if you ask me. So, as the new release date started coming up, this was, I think, May... Watch Dogs came out, I believe, in around May 2014. That was the final version of it. Came out. They had announced that there would be a collector's edition shortly before the Xbox and PS4 release. As far as I can remember, the only versions to get the collector's editions for them were the Xbox One versions and the PS4 version. No other version, as far as I can recall, got a collector's edition, but that's fine. They also started ramping up a huge pre-order campaign. Practically every single company got a different pre-order incentive. Amazon got one, GameStop got one, Best Buy got one. Everybody was getting their own. I thought that was kind of ridiculous, but I'll talk about... I do think that they made nice on that later on. So, and I think that drove a lot of people crazy. I don't like this. If you're going to offer pre-order DLC and stuff like that, offer one set of DLC for one particular retailer, or have the DLC available to anybody who wants it. Either release it for free later on, or do what Ubisoft did, which I'm fine with what Ubisoft did. I'll talk about that again when we talk about the game's release. Leading up to the game's release, Ubisoft started really going in depth with what you'd be able to do. Again, not really too much story with the game, as far as I can remember. I think there might have been a few trailers that showed that Aiden Pierce was basically doing what he was doing for a very good reason. It had to do with family and had to do with him trying to bring down bad people and stuff. So his intentions were pure, certainly. What you'd be able to do with those pure intentions was entirely up to the player, which is fine. I mean, there are games that have morality issues and things like that. Infamous was probably Infamous, Knights of the Old Republic, they all did that sort of thing. That's fine. Fable. Moving on. Ubisoft actually did a really good viral video, which did go viral. It was a really good one where basically they shot a video which people that they said were not actors, I think it was in New York City or something like that, and they had this whole stunt set up where basically anybody coming in to get their phone fixed would basically be given a quote-unquote new app. And the app would be able to do exactly what you'd need to do in the game, or what you could do in the game, but you could do it in the real world, which I thought was kind of cool. I thought it was a really cool video. In the end, you basically cause a traffic accident, and then the cops come, and the guy is like, "No, I don't speak English. I don't speak English," which was pretty funny, actually. And then it's like, "No, it's all gag. There's a video game coming out where you'll actually be able to do that." I thought it was a funny video. I really did. I liked it. The actor they got was pretty good. He was really good at playing a nice guy or a shifty, nefarious person all at the same time. I liked him. I hope he gets more roles later on. The stunt was pretty good. I thought it was impressive the fact that they were able to constantly be able to reset that stunt. It was a pretty good stunt, I think. So there's that. So I was really excited for the game. Fast forward to just before the game's release, I have a birthday. And I decide that, I was going to treat myself as a birthday gift. I was going to buy a copy of the collector's edition for Watch Dogs. I was going to buy the collector's edition for Watch Dogs. I was so excited about it. Now, as far as I can remember, maybe my PS4 was in the shop at that time. I don't remember. My PS4 broke when I first got a PS4. I bought it brand new from Best Buy. It broke within a week. And I don't think it was Best Buy's fault. I really do think that that there just was a lot. It wasn't a large lot. But I did read that was having the issue that I was having. My friend Twitch, his PS4 died on him almost immediately. So there were a few glitchy PS4s to get out there, basically. But as far as I know, it was a small minority. As for Sony's handling of the PS4 replacement or in repair, it's all good. I have no complaints about that. They followed through. It took forever, but they did follow through with exactly what they promised me. They took my old PS4, and in return, they literally sent me a brand spanking new one. I still had the freaking factory sticker on it. And that made me quite happy, actually. I was very happy about that. They sent me basically a brand spanking new one. It took them about 2 weeks, but I did get a PS4 eventually. And but I did get my I did get a copy of the Watch Dogs Collection Edition in advance. It did come. I got it off Amazon, if I remember correctly. I was entitled to the Amazon DLC, the Amazon exclusive pre-order DLC. And so by the time my PS4 came back, I was ready to play. I was really ready to play Watch Dogs. So I popped Watch Dogs into my brand spanking new PS4, loaded the download codes. I unboxed the Collection Edition. I loved the Watch Dogs PS4 Collection Edition. I really did. As I was going over it, and I do actually have an unboxing video on this, I prefer Collection Editions like the provided Collection Edition. I really do. I could literally not stop counting the ways about why I liked it. One, all the content for it was physical. There was all physical content provided with the Watch Dogs Collection Edition. The statue was great, very high quality statue that was included. Bandana was nice. I wish it included the hat. I really like the Watch Dogs hat that Aiden Pierce wears. But that is sold separately. You can get that in the States, no problem, if you want it, so that's fine. Did not include Clara's shirt. I think that there were some that did include Clara's shirt internationally released in Europe. Again, sold separately, you can get it, that's fine too. I think ThinkGeek and GameStop and stuff were selling those shirts, no problem. So you could get them regardless. Again, fine. The statue was great. They included all the included stuff. I think there was an art book included as well. That's, if I remember correctly, that was great. Was it worth the price? Absolutely, I would say so. Oh, and the soundtrack. It did include the CD soundtrack on disc. That's what I want. I don't like collection editions that include soundtracks that are not on disc. I know everybody's saying, but nobody listens to discs anymore. I don't care. A collection edition is a physical thing. Include some physical representation of your content. Even if you're releasing digital content with it, whether it be a film or a soundtrack or something like that, put it on a physical medium, and preferably put it on a physical medium that's widely used, whether it be included on a Blu-ray disc or included on a game disc or CD-ROM or something like that. Include the content on something that is not region locked or is not content locked. I would prefer, honestly, pressing it to a music CD or a Blu-ray disc. DVDs are fine as well, like basic video DVDs. The problem with those video DVDs nowadays is that, well, if you've got a PS4 or a PS3, you've already got a Blu-ray player. And the DVD can't do high definition output unless it's for DVD-ROM purposes. So, yeah. I would say simply do a Blu-ray press. Blu-ray, do it. Don't include a download code. And the reason why are because even on collection editions that are limited release, I've never had a positive experience downloading these download codes, especially when you take into account the collection editions that are all digital, like the ill-fated, terrible God of War 3 collector's edition, which cost $100. None of the digital content actually worked on that. I was having problems with digital download for the Unearthing the Legend documentary. The soundtrack download site that was custom made for it was completely broken. Max Payne 3 included a digital download soundtrack. That site was not available until about 4 or 5 days after the game release came out. For some reason, I don't know. Could have included a CD. I don't know why they chose not to. So yeah, not impressed whatsoever. Absolutely not impressed whatsoever on any of that. So, and on top of that, there have been a lot of games released that just simply include a CD with them at no extra cost. Particularly, there are a lot of Nintendo 3DS games being released nowadays that are including soundtrack CDs free of charge. Conception 2, Devil Summoner, Soul Hackers, more recently, Theater Rhythm Curtain Call. They're including the soundtracks, no extra charge. Granted, it's limited for pre-orders, but still. Watch Dogs did it right. Watch Dogs included a physical soundtrack. And I liked the soundtrack for Watch Dogs. I really did. It's a good soundtrack. I think Amon Tobin did the soundtrack. I remember him because he was working on games like Splinter Cell Chaos Theory and stuff. I really liked him from that. So, yeah, thumbs up on that. So, what did I think of the game immediately? Now, I know that there were a lot of people out there that are going to immediately say they didn't like the game because the graphics were bad. That's fine. From the first moment that the game started, it had me. The very beginning of the game starts, you're in an analog to Wrigley Field in the middle of what would be considered a Chicago Cubs game. You and your friends have just, basically taken care of an entire gang, fatally, to get to one specific person just to interrogate him for what he knows. For a very good reason. In a scene that I will never forget, and I love this scene, the logical conclusion is, okay, how do we get out of here? We've just, started a whole bunch of crap. There are bodies everywhere. We are in the middle of the inside of Wrigley Field, and it's during a Chicago Cubs game. How do we get out of this? What do? Well, you hire the best possible cleaner in the business, who in the game is a guy named Jordy. Jordy comes in, he's like, Aiden, my man, I got this. I got it. Don't worry about it. It's all taken care of. Fantastic. We can get out of here? Oh, yeah. We got this. We're out. We're good. Well, what'd you do? I called the cops. Wait, what? Yeah. I called the cops. They're on their way. You're the best cleaner in the business. And he calls the cops. Jordy, you're a genius. Because it actually worked. And in a brilliant way to get control of the seat, it's a great opening where you have to navigate your way through Wrigley Field, or again, they don't call it Wrigley Field in the game, but it is basically Wrigley Field in Chicago. You have to get out of the stadium, and you have to use all the abilities the CTOS provides you in that sequence. If you ask me, I think they should have shown this scene at previews, but I think the scene was probably so good that they didn't want the scene shown in previews. Maybe they preferred that people who bought the game would be rewarded with that scene immediately. Maybe that was it. Naughty Dog did a similar thing with never showing the prologue for The Last of Us, for example. There are some developers that choose not to do that. They'll show the first 15 minutes of a game. In this case, they chose not to. They showed later portions. Fine. It's a great scene. And as you're running from the cops, I was feeling GTA feeling, but with a little bit more to it than just that. But it greatly reminded me, at least for the ending of that opening scene, when you're running away from the cops and trying to get away from them, trying to lose them, as you're getting away from the field, the stadium. This is GTA, or this is like GTA, but this is more than GTA. So I stopped the game and I was like, I didn't really have time. Open world games for the most part don't really, I'm not a huge fan of open world games. I prefer linear games. The reason why is because it's just so overwhelming. I'm a completionist, so it's easier, open world games can be very, very overwhelming to me at first, especially if guides aren't available and things like that. But just like with Infamous Second Son, there's enough in the game itself, there's enough provided to the player that you don't really need a guide in order to beat it, or 100% complete it at least. You just don't. Enough is provided to you by the game itself that you don't need to worry about that sort of thing, which is great. It's fantastic. That's fantastic. So there's that. And Watch Dogs was exactly like that. You could pretty much, anything you would need to do or that was available to you, the options for missions or collectibles or things like that basically would be easily found on your in-game map. There was a side mission where you would have to hack cell phone towers in order to expand your influence of the CTOS in different areas, as well as manually override the CTOS in different sections. If you were a completionist like me, which I am, those were the first missions that I actually took. I tried to gain access to the CTOS in every area first, and then I got the cell phone towers in each area. And I admit there is one CTOS tower that is specific to a mission. You cannot unlock it until a mission is completed, but it's not counted. It's not counted in the achievement itself, which is great. But it was counted for the items, like the side items that were in that area. So I do like that games are now doing this because it makes being a completionist a lot easier, a lot less time consuming. I don't need to look up a guide on GameFAQs or something like that, or in order to be able to know if I've done everything in the game that's available to me. It's great. So once I picked up and started playing the game immediately, I guess the word is I got immersed. And I think the last time that happened to me, that a game was that immersive to me, a game that was able to suck me in, that once I started playing it, I couldn't stop, or I only would take short breaks basically just to eat or use the bathroom or something like that, was probably South Park: The Stick of Truth. Other games, there are other games like that for me as well. Other games that have done that to me or done that for me. But it's rare. Even really good AAA games didn't really suck me in like Watch Dogs did. And that, for me, is the mark of a good game, or a well-designed game. Infamous Second Son was like that. South Park: The Stick of Truth was like that. Vampire Bloodlines is an older example. Just games like this, I felt it. I was immersed. I wanted to stay in the world. I wanted to be able to do everything that I possibly could in the world that was available to me, whether it be playing the chess minigame, or playing the poker minigame, or just trying to get access to as many cars as I could, or vehicles, or trying to get all the songs that I could, or pull the songs from other people's cell phones and stuff like that, using the Song Sneak app. I was doing as much as I could, basically, in the universe that the game was providing me. Not just because I wanted the trophies or achievements or whatever, but because I was thoroughly enjoying just kind of hanging out and doing these crazy things. I was genuinely enjoying myself, and the rewards were great. I don't want to give too much of the story away because the game is relatively new. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, so I won't really say too much about that. What did I think of the story and the characters without trying to spoil anything? I liked Aiden Pierce. I liked his motivations for being the character that he is. I really liked Clara. I thought she was a great character. I really liked her design. I love Geordie. I thought Geordie was a great, hilarious character. As I described in the prologue, he immediately set himself as a great character. Um, I love the environments in Chicago, especially the environments that Aiden had created for himself, where he had a network set up with backups and all this other stuff. I'm just like, if I had the money, I would probably build something like that. Unfortunately, I don't have the money, but I could see myself with like multi-monitor setups with top-of-the-line PCs and backup utilities and all this other stuff. That would be great. I could build, with the right money. I do build high-end PCs for fun and for personal use. So I probably would be doing stuff like that because I love running high-end PCs and building them. So I got a kick out of that. I thought that the plot's intrigue, what sides are people on, what's their motivation, that sort of thing, kept me guessing. There was very little in the game that was actually predictable, I thought. The overall plot line, as far as I believe, bringing down the company that created the CTOS, as well as the nefarious individuals that have aligned themselves with the CTOS companies, basically to do terrible, terrible things like Lucky Quinn and stuff like that, or what are the characters' names? Justin, DeMarco, or Default. The characters like that, basically, who either were using the CTOS for their own nefarious purposes, which was horrible, or were aligning themselves with the company to simply do terrible things in exchange for money or good word for the company, that sort of thing. If you're from Chicago, I really don't want to say terrible things about your city. I've never been to your city. Your city sounds really awesome. But I know that there is a history of mafia and things like that. It's just kind of like something. I mean, just like New York or anything like that. It has that grime to it, if you will, and that just gives the city part of its charm. And I thought that the game took, maybe based upon those ideas about organized crime and organized corruption and stuff like that, and revolutionized it or modernized it. That's the proper word, modernized it. This was a beautiful city on the surface, but there was still crime and corruption. But it wasn't like it wasn't just bullets. We're a lot more. Things are done digitally nowadays. We're not going to rob you at gunpoint anymore. We're going to sneak your money out of your cell phone by basically remotely accessing your bank account using your cell phone, that sort of thing. It's what we consider nowadays pickpocketing. We don't go on websites to rip songs. We pull them straight from other people's devices. It's a new form of crime. And the game, as far as I know, this is the first game that really, really took on that. What is the future of crime? Could that be the future of crime? Likely. I like that. I really did. I thought it worked really well. On top of the environment, on top of the gameplay from already existing sandbox styles, I thought it worked really well. It was immersive. I liked the story. Right around the same time that the game was ramping up for release, Ubisoft had announced that there was going to be a Season Pass release for the game. Now, I think the Season Pass came out pretty quickly around the game's launch. It was available by the time I started playing the game, certainly. The Season Pass, like many other Season Passes for other games, was a pre-order promise, basically, for future DLC. The way it worked is like with other Season Passes, you download the Season Pass, and you would have instant access to DLC without having to pay any extra. In fact, actually, you might be able to get a discount on it for any future content that would be coming out for the game up until a certain point. In some cases, in some cases there were cutoff points basically. So there was that. Ubisoft released at the season pass at a price of $20 US, $19.99, which I thought was a fair price. Nowadays, there are a lot of games that are pushing 30. 30. Forget it. No. I know that Dead Rising had done a $30 season pass. I think Rise did a $30 season pass. Forget it. Not worth it. I think 20 is the good spot. But if you're going to do a season pass like they did, how do I put this? If you're going to do a season pass like they did for something worthy of a season pass, you've got to include a single player at least one single player DLC expansion, and a lot of smaller DLC exclusive content. Basically, the way Ubisoft handled the season pass was that at the same time that they released the season pass, they also released a separate VR minigame called the Conspiracy Digital Trip. It was basically just a simple minigame that was added to the other minigames that you could play in the game itself, like Coin Run or Spider Tank, stuff like that. And that's what, it's just one of the games among many that you could play. Great, wonderful. They released it for $5, standalone, about a week later. But the promise was that more DLC content was coming. Now, they were absolutely convinced that there would be a major single player expansion coming to the season pass holders along with the season pass. In fact, it was that single player expansion where you would be able to play as a side character, T-Bone, another great character, by the way. I loved T-Bone. I won't really go too much into T-Bone because that would kind of be talking about spoilers. I don't want to talk too much about T-Bone exactly because I don't want to spoil discovering him in the game itself. But they said that there would be a playable single-player expansion where you get to be able to play as T-Bone. Now, this kind of harkened back to other games that did that sort of thing or released single-player expansions for their games. Particularly The Last of Us, when they did the Left Behind single-player expansion. I thought that it was very similar in that vein. But that was going to be the big creme de la creme of the season pass, was going to be that expansion. But there was other stuff that I was really interested, hoping that would be coming to the season pass. In particular, I was hoping that Ubisoft would release the just slew of content that they had offered for pre-order. And I said to myself, there was so much content that Ubisoft had created for every individual retailer, whether it be single-player expansion content for extra missions or extra weapons or extra clothing, that sort of stuff. For me, what would have brought me over the hump, basically, if you will, to purchase the Watch Dogs Season Pass would have been if Sony had released a season pass for it, basically, like the season pass would have allowed you to purchase the and download all of the single player content that was offered as pre-order. I thought that was a really cool offer, and they do that content. All of the single player missions, as well as the digital content for extra clothes, extra weapons, extra missions, that was all pre-order stuff, is available as part of the Season Pass. You can if you download and purchase the Season Pass, you can actually download that extra content. Great, wonderful, fantastic. There is other stuff. There are 2 Untouchables packs that are exclusive to the Season Pass right now. I don't think those were released separately. If they are, I haven't seen them on the PlayStation Store separately. But those were released, so there was some extra stuff included with the Season Pass. The Conspiracy Digital Trip was also released as part of the Season Pass. But the thing that got me to purchase the Season Pass was not the single-player DLC. The thing that got me to get it early was all the pre-order DLC stuff being offered. So remember how I said before how I was really upset that retailers would offer all this separate DLC for separate content and stuff like that, basically making you have to pre-order at different places or all these different places in order to get all the content. Because a lot of the time they don't offer this stuff separately. They did do this. They did make nice by offering it with the season pass. They did make nice on that. In fact, actually, there are a lot of. That's not a guarantee. There are season passes out there that I will not buy because there's not enough content to merit the price. Basically, like DLC content for pre-orders were not included, so it wasn't a guarantee that they would include that content. And I'm grateful to Ubisoft for doing that. So I know that I'm putting off talking about the single-player expansion. I'm actually not putting off. I am going to talk about that. In fact, that's the reason why I waited to do this podcast. My plan was to do this podcast and release it earlier. But as the time started ramping up to the release of the single-player expansion titled Bad Blood, I kind of wanted to play through Bad Blood before doing this podcast because I wanted to include information from Bad Blood on this podcast as I could, because I kind of try to be as forward-thinking as possible before I do a podcast, basically. And I want to talk about Bad Blood as well. I do consider it part of the Watch Dogs franchise, part of the Watch Dogs story, certainly. Before I start talking about Watch Dogs Bad Blood, I think there's going to be an event in the Watch Dogs news history that everybody's going to want me to talk about first, and I totally understand that. When the game was first previewed, it was on a graphical level, the likes of which we very rarely got to see. There were full-on active shadows, major reflective lighting, real-time reflections, all kinds of just crazy, wonderful graphics. And everybody was really impressed, like this was going to be the next best graphic setting game for your PC or for your home theater system or something like that. And they were fairly certain that if the graphical systems were able to run on like the PlayStation 4, we'd be able to see the PlayStation 4 version and probably the Xbox One version at full graphical detail on top of what we would already be able to see on the PC. There were some people that thought that maybe the PC would be able to do the best version, but at the very least that the PS4 and the Xbox One would be able to at least do something comparable or close enough. When the game came out, the graphics on the game, even on the PS4 version of the game, were not as good as what people were hoping for. That's not to say the game looked terrible like I'm sure that everybody remembers Aliens Colonial Marines, where I remember seeing the game demoed in person several times, and the final version of the game looked like utter and complete shit. The final version of Watch Dogs did not look like shit. It does not look like shit. Even on the PS4 version does not look like shit. It actually also runs very, very, very well. But it did not look, and this was a controversy, a lot of people considered this a controversy, in that the final version of the game did not look as good as the initial demo for it did. I personally, I have a bit I want to say about this, and I don't mean to offend anybody, because you're welcome to your own opinions on this, but there are a few reasons why I understood what they did. Given the fact of how well the game runs on the PS4, it's very smooth. It runs a lot smoother than Infamous Second Son did, for example, and Infamous Second Son looked better. Ubisoft's reasons for why there was the graphical quote-unquote downgrade or graphical compression basically rang true, or at least seemed to ring true. They basically said that the higher resolution graphics had a problem of reading more difficultly. Like, it was tougher for people to see the difference between one building or another or something like that. It was much more, it was, by doing what they did, by retweaking the graphics, it made it easier for the graphics to be seen and for things to be differentiated. I could understand that. The second thing that they said was it had better performance across the spectrum. Now, some PC players rang hollow on that because they said, well, PC games have always been allowed to be able to choose your graphical options, or to be able to tweak graphical options to the way that they were happy with. Simply disabling those higher resolution graphics kind of seemed a bit hollow to them. until a modder went through the PC graphics ionize or whatever it was, started tweaking graphics settings in the in-game files and started enabling all of these crazy, incredible graphics on the PC version. When he released the mod to the public, Ubisoft did nothing about it. They didn't stop him. They gave their explanation that you probably will get a performance hit from it, but they didn't stop him from doing it. And while Ubisoft did release subsequent patches for the system ever since the mod has been released, none of those subsequent patches disabled the mod or broke the mod. Now, there are some... I've seen the mod in action. There's real-time shadows on headlights, which is something that is not in the final version of the game. Higher resolution textures with less compression on them, so the textures look clearer. I don't remember if they tweaked the reflections. I know that there are static reflections in, at least on surfaces and stuff like that, so there are static reflections, and even in the PS4 version there are static reflections. But I think that Ubisoft made the right decision by... I would be angrier at them, I guess. I guess this is my point. If they had completely removed the options for those graphical settings, or if they had done something to cease and desist the modder who had restored these graphical settings, I would be mad at Ubisoft. Since they haven't done either, nor do I think they plan to do either, they could have disabled the mod or sent them a cease and desist at any point up until this point. Or the more subsequent PC-specific patches could have disabled or destroyed the mod or removed the content that made the mod work. They chose not to do that. That scored some points with me. I know that there are some people out there that wish that the PS4 version might be able to be running a bit better. There's no reason to suspect that maybe they might not improve the graphics in the future for the game. With a subsequent patch of some sort. In all likelihood, though, they probably intentionally did this because of performance. I'm guaranteeing you, because the game does run performance quite well, I'm pretty certain that they were very concerned that any type of bumping to the graphic textures or anything like that, especially given a game with a world as big as that one, all running in memory without any load times, except when fast traveling, I think they are concerned that if they bumped up the graphics, there would be performance read issues and things like that. So, yeah, that's my take on it. My take on it is that I'm not really mad at Ubisoft. I think they made it for a performance decision on the consoles. The PC version, I would be madder at them, but since they did not remove the mod, the content assets are still in there. I really, I think that they made a decision, they stuck with the decision, but at the very least, since they are allowing people to mod their games to improve the graphics and to restore the original graphics, simply with the caveat that the original graphics are buggy and they are performance issues with them, I think that I'd be madder with them if they had chose differently. If they had removed the mod or broken the mod in a subsequent patch, I would be mad at them. Since they haven't done either, I'm not mad. And that is my take on it. If you're a PC... if you're a member of the glorious PC Master Race, you can install this mod. Like I said, there are caveats about bugs and things like that, but if you're willing to mod your game, then you're probably willing to accept those bugs or performance hits. Go for it. It's your game. It's your decision. Ubisoft has not stopped it. If you want to install the mod, by all means do it. I would like to see some of these graphics improved in the PS4, but like I said, I was pretty happy with the PS4 game's performance. If they can't, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. So there you have it. There's my take on this issue. I'm still mad at Aliens Colonial Marines for several reasons, but that's also because they made a shit game. So there's that. Ubisoft's Watch Dogs I did like. So after that, event distraction, what do you say we talk about Bad Blood? Now, right after I beat Watch Dogs, and again, without spoiling anything about how the game ends, I wanted a sequel. I'm like, get me a damn sequel. I've talked to people directly that have played through Watch Dogs who have not felt that. In fact, I think their exact words were, okay, thank goodness this chore is over when they beat the game. and have not subsequently tried to go back and replay it or anything or play anything further once they completed the game's story. Not to say that there have been games that these friends have played that I've also enjoyed that they enjoyed, but yeah, I have talked to people that basically did not like the game. They considered completing it a chore. I, on the other hand, played it and I was like, I want a sequel. I want to play more. Which is why I was so eager to download the season pass. I wanted the missions. I wanted more missions. I wanted to do more in Chicago. I wanted to be able to do more in the open world that they had provided. I wanted more missions. I wanted more options for stuff to do. And then Watch Dogs Bad Blood came out a couple of days ago. And I felt like I got that sequel I wanted. I know, right? I'm surprised too. Typically, an expansion pack is just that, like an expansion pack, a side story. It doesn't really, it never really felt, for a lot of people, I mean, it just feels like a small side story, like a small aside. Doesn't really have the same feeling as a full-size sequel. For me, Bad Blood, maybe it was the fact that they chose to use the entire open world. Maybe it was the fact that they provided so many extra side missions as well as extra collectibles and things like that. Maybe it was the decision that they made the story for as long as it did. I considered it practically a sequel. It does take place after the events of the first Watch Dogs game, so it is technically a sequel. Even though it is a smaller side story, it's not. Its main story is probably around 4 or 5 hours. I would say it's not by any means the full size AAA title. I would say ballpark 11 or so hours plus. But then again, there have been plenty of AAA titles that are 5 hours long, and don't have anywhere near as much side content as Bad Blood does. So, what do you have to say about that? Other than the fact of, yeah, that's surprising. The game is available for those people who do not want do not have the season pass or do not want to purchase the season pass. I would totally recommend just simply getting the season pass. But if you don't, Bad Blood is currently available right now as a separate purchase. I believe it's $15 on the button. So that makes all the extra content is an extra $5 if you just consider like Bad Blood to be the major selling point of the season pass. Since Conspiracy is sold $5 differently, you'd basically get Conspiracy, Bad Blood, plus all the pre-order DLC, of which there is tons. There's a lot of pre-order DLC, a lot of extra missions and content in the pre-order DLC alone, as well as the Untouchables packs, which honestly don't add that much, but, consider that, I basically consider the Untouchable packs about an extra pre-order deal, on the level of extra pre-order DLC or something like that. Is it worth it? I would say absolutely. Get the season pass. I don't typically say this about season passes, either because the content isn't worth the money or it's too expensive or it's just the content isn't worth it. But Watch Dogs, their season pass is completely, totally, and utterly worth it. Totally worth the purchase and the download. Get it. Bad Blood's main character is T-Bone. It is not Aiden Pierce, although Aiden Pierce is referenced several times throughout the game. His presence is certainly felt. I really don't want to spoil the game's story because, like I said, it just officially got released last week. So I kind of don't want to tell anybody exactly what happens in it, other than maybe what was already said in the trailers and what you can do in it. There are side stories. There are main missions. The game does bring in cooperative multiplayer missions, which is something that the first game did not have. All the multiplayer in the game was all competitive. Yeah. Okay, at this point, I'd like to start wrapping up this podcast, and the way I typically will wrap up a podcast is by talking about what I believe the future of this series is going. As for other stuff in the Watch Dogs Extended Universe that is available, there has been a digital novel release through Amazon and iBooks. Unfortunately, I haven't read it, but I know that's out there. I don't know I don't know what's in it exactly because, like I said, I don't have a copy of it, but that is part of the Watch Dogs Extended Universe. I do wish they had instead just released it on paperback. I would have preferred that. But yeah, for people who would prefer to have a digital version, it's available. What do I think is the future of the franchise? Ubisoft has had a few musings here and there, like Watch Dogs as a game was the launch of an entirely new franchise for Ubisoft, that they planned on having regular re-release content, a regularly released content, just along the same lines of Assassin's Creed and Rayman or the Raving Rabbits or anything like that, basically. They fully intended for this to be an entirely new franchise, that they would have further content. Ubisoft does have a film division now. For all we know, we could see a Watch Dogs movie come out through that. I know that they're currently working on an Assassin's Creed movie. Maybe if that does well, we could see a Watch Dogs movie. That's possible. If they do it, that'd be cool. That would be cool. I hope that they keep the Aiden Pierce costume the way it is. I think that would be kind of cool. Or shoot it in Chicago. That would be really awesome on location. So I do think the story could work. I do think the story could work as a film with certain adaptations, but I do think the story could work. So you've got that, basically. But what about the future for other games? Now, I really like Aiden Pierce as a character. I really think that there is more stories that they could tell with him or with his family, what happens to his family and things like that after the events of the game. What happens to him based upon what happens to his family after the events of the game, that sort of thing. Bad Blood did drop a hint that there would be a future with Aiden Pierce but if you consider Bad Blood as... Or what's mentioned in Bad Blood, they do like I said, even though you don't play as Aiden Pierce in Bad Blood, he is mentioned on a few times, as like they would be getting in contact with him. It's tough for me to talk about this because I really don't want to spoil anything. If you haven't played the game, either Bad Blood or if you haven't played through the main game, just cover your ears or just shut off the podcast right now. But I do need to talk a little bit about spoilers for this last part. During Bad Blood, there is one mention when T-Bone tries to get hold of Aiden Pierce that Aiden Pierce is in St. Louis or is headed to St. Louis. Ubisoft, like I said, had previously announced that if they were to do a Watch Dogs sequel, the probability would be pretty high that they would either do a new location that was not Chicago or with new characters or both. I totally don't want them to do new characters because you spend all this time setting up these characters and we've got some connection to them basically. I liked the characters but you can change the location. If you want to do a new city or something like that, whether it be New York, Miami, Los Angeles, St. Louis, anything like that, that's fine. That's fine. Any place that might be considering implementing the CTOS after Chicago did it, I would totally be down with that. I would feel like if you were to do a sequel, I'd be fine if it was same characters, new location, or same basic cast of characters, then add some new characters, but same basic, but new location. I think that would be a great decision to do. Even though Chicago was great for a location, you can change it. There are other urban sprawls that exist out there. Grand Theft Auto did it when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, they were doing an analog to New York. When the later subsequent game came out, they did an analog to Miami. And when the next game came out, they did an analog to the Midwest. The Southwest. If you want to do that, fine. That's great. Change the location. I like the characters. And like I said, if there was one location I was betting on based upon an off reference in Bad Blood, it's St. Louis. I think they might do St. Louis next. From the sounds of it, at least from what I've seen in Bad Blood, I don't suspect that they're going to change the characters. I think that Aiden Pierce, T-Bone, and a few characters from Bad Blood might return. Spoilers, Clara's a definitely no because she's dead. Which is unfortunate because, again, I really liked her. So, would I buy this game if it came out? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do think that sequels have a habit of improving upon the original games. The developers learn what works. They learn what doesn't work. And for by the time the second game comes out, it's even better than the first. It happened with, most recently I can think of, it happened with Uncharted. The Uncharted series, everybody basically said that Uncharted 2 was much, much better than Uncharted 1. Sold a lot better. It was more refined and more polished. The graphics were better. I could see them improving. I mean, the only time I've seen where sequels are not as good as the first is if the developers change hands for sequels. That always is bad. If Ubisoft's Watch Dogs team decides they're going to make Watch Dogs 2, then I do think that they can do a good job at improving upon it. I really do. I do think that I am looking forward. I am looking forward to a Watch Dogs 2. I hope Ubisoft announce it. However, as of the point of this podcast, there has been no announcement of a sequel to Watch Dogs. Because of the reviews of it, that is kind of like, that might be something that Ubisoft is kind of taking a back seat on right now. If Ubisoft would like this fan's opinion, you got it. Keep the characters, make a sequel, do it in a different location. That's what I think you should do. I think it would make for a cool story of the CTOS company branching out. And trying to basically stop them under that would be kind of pretty awesome sequel, I think. So there's my take on it. There's my take on Watch Dogs. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I'd like to thank you guys for listening to it. Don't know what I'll do for another podcast, but if you have any ideas that you'd like to bring out there, please post a comment. I'd love to hear from you. I'm more than happy to take requests on this channel and on my website. So once again, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Until next time, guys, this is Maniac with GameAccess.net. Over and out.